Bad vocals used to haunt me at night. I'm not kidding. I used to lay in bed thinking about everything I needed to do to get professional sounding vocals. I built vocal booths. I bought nicer microphones. I watched hours of production tutorials. I purchased all the plugins I could, but my vocals still sounded amateur. But finally, after years of frustration, I figured it out. Those pro vocals I was chasing were actually right in front of me the whole time. I just had no idea how to get them. If my story sounds familiar, then stick around, because in this video, I'm going to share with you everything I learned over a decade of experience to make my vocal tracks shine. I'll walk you through the entire process from writing to recording to mixing, and I'll share with you how I finally fixed my terrible vocal sound. Let's do it. The first thing I learned about creating good vocals comes from before you even touch a microphone or plugin at all. It comes from the writing. Writing is so underrated when it comes to music production. Everyone's always focused on how to mix this or what plugin should I use, but if I spent half the time practicing my writing as I did watching countless mixing tutorials, my vocals would probably be twice as good. Now, what do I mean writing? When I say writing, I'm talking about the actual lyrics, melody, and flow of the vocal you're recording. It's a fundamental part of the final song in all genres. Because it's so overlooked, I plan on making a bunch more videos about songwriting in the future, so hit subscribe so you don't miss those. Although every song is different, here are some general tips I've learned throughout the years when it comes to writing. Give your melody room to breathe. Think of the melody like you're speaking. There should be pauses and silence. A melody that never stops going is probably doing too much. Sing in your vocal range. While writing your lyrics and melody, make sure it sounds good in your particular vocal range. I love singing high, but my voice sounds much better and more professional when I sing lower. Find what works for you. Adjust the intensity of your voice to fit the part of the song you're in. Generally, your voice should be lower and less intense in the verse so that when it comes to the chorus, you can raise the energy of the song by singing higher and louder. After I started following these writing tips, my vocal productions were already in a way better spot even before I hit record. After the writing gets refined, it's time to start recording your voice. My God, have I learned a lot about this. Having a solid melody and words to say is one thing, but getting a passionate, well-recorded performance is another. Here are some general tips I've discovered over the years that have helped me nail the recording every time. Use a large diaphragm condenser. This will give you the most high-end detail of your voice, which will make it sound the best later. Also, use a pop filter. This will get rid of any extra pops or S's. Stay between 4 to 8 inches from the microphone. The closer you are, the boomier the sound will be. Whatever you choose, keep it consistent throughout your recording so your voice will sound the same. Acoustic treatment equals professionalism. If your mic picks up too much room noise, it will sound amateur later and you won't be able to compress it like you should. Get some panels on the walls, and that is a fast track to professional vocals. Focus on passion over pitch. Pitch can easily be adjusted later, but there is no plugin for passion. Focus on the energy and the feeling of the vocal first rather than a pitch-perfect performance. Sing in the pocket. The pocket refers to the timing of a song. Singing in the pocket means you're nailing the rhythm and flow of a song. Adjusting the timing after the recording is very tedious and often doesn't sound good. Get it right from the start. Record multiple takes. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Be ruthless in your level of vocal performances and then compile the best takes together. Then you can use the takes that you don't use to layer with the original vocal. Especially those last 3 tips, I really wish I paid more attention to when I was starting my production journey. And if you follow those writing and recording tips, you'll probably have a vocal that sounds pretty darn close to professional already. If you've nailed the writing and the recording, the mixing becomes so much easier. I used to think mixing was the reason my voice sounded so much different than the voices on the radio. But after all these years, I realized that it's only a small part of it. Mixing can add the final 30% of polish to a track, but it won't change a bad singer or fix a poorly written melody. It still is important though, and so I'm going to show you the vocal chain that I use on almost every vocal track. I'll only use stock plugins to do so you can follow along. The truth is, expensive plugins can make your mixing job easier, but you can still get a pro sound using only the plugins you already have in your DAW. Let's get started with vocal correction. In today's music world, many genres require pitch-perfect vocals. For most genres, auto-tune has become a prerequisite before uploading a song. In this case, I'll use the Logic stock pitch correction, which is just okay. For professional tracks, I'll go through every word and correct it with Melodyne. Then after that, I'll throw on an auto-tune.
Speak a language, but I can read your body move. Yeah, let's make our own paradise and let's go get out.
After correction, we'll throw on some EQ. In my opinion, EQ is the most important part of a pro sounding vocal, and it's also the biggest thing that will affect your sound. Here are some general EQ moves that I use on almost every vocal. Use a high-pass filter to low-cut a lot of the sub-frequencies out. Then dip a lot of the mud frequencies between 250 and 600 Hz. And finally, boost the air above 8K with a shelf. But every vocal is different. Sometimes I'll also cut 1000 Hz from the voice, and others I'll cut 4K. I experiment until I'm satisfied with the sound. If these EQ moves seem a bit too complicated, I've actually created a free vocal preset pack with 10 stock plug-in vocal chains just like this that you can download and use right now, link in the description. Next up, we'll use compression. Compression will help bring the volume of our voice to be more consistent throughout the track. If there's a word that's too quiet to hear, compression will help it cut through. Here are some general compression guidelines I follow for most vocals I work on. Use multiple compressors in a row. This helps it sound more natural. Use an 1176 type compressor for some cool coloration. In Logic, it's called the Studio FET. Use one compressor with a lower ratio like 2:1, and then another compressor with a higher ratio like 4:1. Shoot for between -5 and -10 dBs of gain reduction for each compressor. Use a medium fast attack like 15 milliseconds and a fast release around 40 milliseconds. If you follow these guidelines, your voice will be way closer to the pros, but be careful not to overdo the compression. The more compression you add, the less energy and passion of the original performance shines through. Next, I'll use a de-esser if necessary. After boosting the high end of my voice with EQ, sometimes it's necessary to throw a de-esser on afterwards. After that, I'll use some spatial audio effects to put my voice in more of a space. Normally that means I'll add delay and reverb. Here's some general tips I use for delay and reverb. Put the delay before the reverb. Use a short delay in place of reverb to make more room in the mix. You can bust both delays and reverb for more fine-tuned control. Automate the delays and reverbs to fill in the empty spaces of a vocal. Use multiple reverbs with different timings for better effects. And once I've got all that on my vocal, I'll begin to mix it in with the song itself. If these tips were too much to follow, go and download those 10 free vocal presets I've made that use the same exact advice I just gave. After all that advice and all those years I've spent toiling over vocals, we've come to this. Take a listen to this vocal I've been working on throughout the entire video. You've heard snippets of it throughout, but here's what it sounds like after following all of the pieces of advice I've come to know.
When it's you and me, we don't need anybody. I go with you, rabbi-dabby-dabby. Start partying, labby-dabby-dabby. When it's you and me, we don't need anybody.
The result? Something that sounds special, impressive, something that my younger self would have loved to know how to make. And now you do. Go and use my guidelines to fix your bad vocals and make some incredible music.